All right, so today we're going to keep going on with what we had going on. But first, I within the past 30 minutes, you should have received a notification or an email from me or from Blackboard talking about FREDCast. And it's something I kind of introduced on Monday, but then just kind of introduced it. Hey, we'll talk about it today. And today, I have everything ready for it and so on. So your email, you have this email, and in it is a link, and then below that is a lead code, or it's also in your Blackboard announcements. There's a link that takes you to this page, which is the FREDCast, basically the FREDCast page. Takes you straight to this, to the login page. You'll have to create an account, log in, but shouldn't be any problems. It worked fairly well for me. And the instructions on the announcement say exactly what I'm saying right now. I just want to show it off because I don't know, why not? So you'll click the link on the announcement, and then you'll click on this sign in to play. When you click that, you'll be able to sign. Once you make an account, you can click that. Before that, you'll click create an account. You'll create an account. If you want to subscribe to a newsletter, you can. You don't have to. I don't care if you do or not. I don't have a way to check, and I literally doesn't matter to me in the slightest. If any of the newsletters seem interesting, go for it. If not, don't. Where it says in what context, you'll say you're a student, but that's how that goes. So once you create your account, you'll sign in. I don't know if you have to verify your email or not, but if you do, it's okay. So we sign in. And then it will, oops, not there. Let's try again. Sign me in. So once you sign in, there we go. It'll take you to this FREDCast page. And what this does is it kind of has a calendar of all the release dates for data and so on. And this will be a once a month assignment, not meant to take like hours or anything. It's meant to be fairly quick, but so on. So the first thing you'll need to do is hit league info. And then you'll want to click this bottom one, join a league. When you hit join a league, it'll give you, you'll have it enter your invite code. The invite code, I think, is like highlighted on that announcement in Blackboard. Once you get the invite code, you'll have a section that says Econ 130, whatever the name of our section is, and so on. Once you have that done, you're in. From that, you just log in, do what you need to do. So if you click enter your forecasts, you'll see the, don't look at my forecasts, but you'll see what's kind of going on. You'll have the opportunity to make predictions on what's going to happen between basically January 20th and February 20th. These numbers get released at different times of the month, but they work. So what you can do is you can go in and you have these four things. If you want to just throw data in, you can. I don't recommend that, especially in months after this one. But if you click on the blue text, so if we said unemployment rate, if you click on unemployment rate, a couple things that will come up. One, you'll see it'll give a definition of what unemployment rate is. It'll tell you more information about it, but then it'll also have the previous value. So in December 2019, unemployment rate was 3.5%. If you click on that previous value, it'll shoot up a interactive graph that you can play with, and so on. Right. And it will load. The internet everywhere in our area has just been bad lately. I don't know if anyone else has noticed that or not, but it'll show unemployment trends, and you can move graphs around, whatever you need to do. For the sake of this, you probably don't care what it was in 1950, for the sake of predicting next month's, but whatever you do, you can do. So these are due January 20th. I'm sorry that's kind of a closer deadline, but it's a very, after the 20th, you won't be able to submit it, not by my rule, by their rule, because numbers start coming out. So sometime between now and Monday, just go in. It shouldn't take too long, and so on. And it should work out fairly well for you. You predict numbers, yeah. That's the assignment. Now in February, I might have a little worksheet or something to go with it. But this month, I want it just be kind of a practice month. Just get comfortable with the system. If you have questions, email me, and so on. And always, if you have questions over anything, let me know. I'm happy to help however I can. So that is FREDCast, our little game. And please don't spend hours on it. It's not meant to take hours. Don't overthink something. Don't have like a mental breakdown whether you want to put 3.4, 3.5% unemployment. Right? I'm not gonna fail you. I'm not even gonna take a point off if you don't have the right numbers. It's mainly a this month especially is participation. The next few months we'll say, hey, well, why do you think this is gonna happen? So on and so on. Might have to go a little more in depth, but shouldn't be anything too crazy. And really gets that application of what we have going on. So last time the clock caught up on me, if I remember right. I thought we ended at a 15. Instead, we end at 45. So I probably talked about micro and then finished. Never talked about macro economics.
I think you did start macro. I don't have anything for monetary and fiscal policy, so
Cool.
you're definitely right before there.
Okay,
But I have this macro one filled out.
cool. Then we'll start monetary and fiscal policy, because that would be where we are, and so on. So we talked about the two different classes and so on. Yes, I do. Do keep track of your packets. I tend to print out exact numbers. It helps me keep track of stuff, but I tend to print out exact numbers. So keep track of them. If you don't, I probably have extras, but just something to be mindful of. So when we think about our policy, and we're not gonna, being a micro course, we're not gonna dive too much into like policy as an abstract, but the two main types we're gonna see are monetary and fiscal. So monetary, let's do that. So monetary is gonna be that policy that's dealing with interest rates, how much credit is in the economy, and the extent of borrowing. So this is determined by our country's central bank. And in the US, this is the Federal Reserve. And we're kind of a couple steps away from this because we don't get to vote for the chair of the Federal Reserve or anything like that. So we have a couple steps away, so it's a little bit out of like voter hands, but in the long run, right, it's kind of in our say, but not too much. It's probably not something you'd want people voting for, as weird as that may sound, because when people say interest rates, it's something most of us really don't have a solid understanding of what's going on with it. But Federal Reserve, so the leadership of it is appointed by the president and then confirmed by the Senate, much like a Supreme Court justice or any federal judge for that matter. The second type of policy that we're going to run into, and we'll kind of deal with this somewhat as we go through, especially in the third unit, we have what's called fiscal policy. And our fiscal policy is going to involve our, it's going to involve our government spending and taxes. So government spends money, government collects taxes. Right, we're all familiar with paying taxes. It's one of the two things you can't avoid in life. And the government spends money on things. So this morning we woke up and the roads are basically covered in ice. So the money for the state plows to get out and had to come from somewhere. The snowplow drivers got paid. The state had to pay for the salt or whatever the stuff that, I know the county uses sand, but whatever the mix that the state uses, they had to pay for it.
Do they budget that, like, based on?
Yes, they do budget for a certain amount of snow and stuff. Yeah. So we budget for it, but it is something that we have to spend money on. So it's something that the government spends money on, then we collect taxes. So this fiscal policy is mainly going to be determined by our legislative body, which for us is the Congress. So it has to go through the House and the Senate, or it has to go through the Senate and the House. Whoever thinks of it first, I guess, gets to think of it first. So in the U.S., this makes it through Congress. and then it would be signed by the president. If the president vetoes it, it goes, watch, I'm only a bill. It kind of explains the whole process from Schoolhouse Rock. But if the president vetoes it, go back to Congress. They can override a veto with a 2/3 majority vote. If they do that, the veto is overridden. But yes.
So where does like Bitcoin stand? Like cryptocurrencies? Like are those like United States? Like would those be under like specific policies, or is that just kind of like a floating currency that anyone in the world can use?
So the question at hand is Bitcoin. It's Bitcoin. How does Bitcoin work? So Bitcoin itself is not controlled by any government. It is a decentralized currency. There is no one person that controls it. There's no single entity that controls Bitcoin. That's part of the beauty of it. So with Bitcoin, the way it kind of works is all of our computers talk to each other on the network, and there's encryption and all that stuff, which I'm not getting into because I don't even understand it myself. But you have this encrypted list of basically every transaction that happens, and every computer has it. And basically every transaction gets broadcasted out to everybody through a private code. And the only two people that actually can read the finer details of that transaction are me and you. Right? But Bitcoin is decentralized. There's not really a way for a government to control it. However, in your 2019 tax returns, which I don't have my W-2s yet, but I started kind of playing with them. One of the questions that comes up is, have you invested in a cyber currency? So the government wants to try to tax them like a capital gains. So if you buy a stock, you gain value. You're considered to have gained capital. They want to try and tax it like that, but it's kind of hard to do because
Can they even track that? Like
no,
you could
they
just say
can't.
no.
Yeah, you can.
Yeah.
And there's no way for them to track it.
Yeah.
Kind of like a Swiss bank account, just you don't have to go to Switzerland for it.
Mm-hmm.
It's a really cool system. We might dive a little more into it. It's more of a macro topic, but I don't know, if we have some spare time and we want to talk about it, we can dive into it a little bit more down the road if we want to. If we don't want to, we don't have to.
Yeah.
But yeah. Do you have a question?
Yeah, I was gonna say, I've heard of what exactly is Bitcoin.
So Bitcoin, it's what's called a cyber currency. So if you think about your dollar, right? And if you think about what money is in general, money is just money. If I could summarize in one sentence, I would say is a universally accepted good, right? This dollar, anybody here wouldn't mind having this dollar, right? If I gave it to you to buy something, it'll work. If I take it out there, it'll work. Everybody wants it. If we had something like, if I came in and I said, hey, I like your tumbler, I'll give you a pig for your tumbler, right? You might be a little more, maybe not, depends on who you are. Yeah, but depending on who you are, right, a pig would be either yay or nay, right? If you live in certain places, you can't have a pig or so on, or whatever the case is. So Bitcoin, it's a money. Now, what makes Bitcoin different from a traditional currency, what makes it a cyber currency, is that it's all kind of done online. And what makes it different from like the US dollar is kind of coming back to that decentralization. There is no one entity that controls it. Now there is somebody who made it, obviously. Nobody actually knows who it is. But basically everything with Bitcoin, you can get all the code for Bitcoin. Anybody can access it, see how it works and so on. There's encryption, all that fun stuff. But basically it's a currency that is not managed by a government. If I had to summarize it, that's how I would. Make sense? Cool. So we have that fiscal policy and monetary policy. The nice thing about Bitcoin not being managed by a government is you can't just print it. It's set to be mined, and there's a certain way it's already determined how much money there ever will be. So whereas we, as the United States, if we wanted to, can just print our way out of debt, with Bitcoin, it's harder to do. So in theory, it should have a more stable value. However, its value will vary greatly by how governments react to it. A couple of years ago, it actually got up to like $20,000 for one Bitcoin. But then China is like, hey, we don't like Bitcoin. And when that happened, it kind of tanked the Bitcoin market pretty bad from like $20,000 to $10,000. But if you bought it like 10 years ago, it was selling for pennies. If you had bought like 100 Bitcoin 10 years ago, you'd be rich today. So
the value of it is based off of how much like countries like it, kind of like
a little bit.
because like the U.S. dollar fluctuates depending on like our economy, basically.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah. But that one's not like linked to that. So like the value is just kind of like what people want to pay for it.
Yes, it's like
At the time.
it's almost like a stock.
Yeah. So it kind of just goes up and down.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily how much countries like it, because it's more about how much people are willing to spend for it. Now, if the United States did something to ban it, obviously it would hurt the value of it. But its value is based purely on the market, and what countries think about it is just one factor of that market. So we have that. So next little bit looks at theories and models. I'm going to try and breeze through this one because it's kind of just, it's there. But theories and models. So when we think about the economy, right, and even when we're talking about Bitcoin in this case, we're talking about like the encryption, right? Now, it probably wouldn't do us much good if I went in and I found a script that explained how encryption works. It would probably do very little good for us, right? Because right, unless you're really into computers, you probably don't know much about what that means or how that works. So what we want to do is we want to find a way to take our complex world, right? And even if we think about just our small Fairway, right? Just it's a little regional grocery store chain and so on. If you go to Fairway, imagine I said right now, somebody go get some ketchup, right? So one of you are going to go out and get ketchup. Now, a couple problems are going to come up. One, you don't know if I'm a picky eater or not, right? I've never presented my views on GMOs or salt or sugar or anything like that. So there's a lot you don't necessarily know about me. So when we go to Fairway, or you go to Walmart or Hy-Vee, whatever your favorite store is, there are multiple brands of ketchup available. There are multiple brands, multiple varieties. And since we live in the States, there are multiple varieties. If you go to London, you'll kind of get what I mean. Go to Casey's, you have like 100 different types of pops. In London, you have Coke, Diet Coke, Fanta, Sprite. That's pretty much it. In downtown London at a little convenience store, which was weird, but oh well. When we think about ketchup, right? So if you think about what's available, off the top of my head, I'd say there's different brands: Heinz, Hunt's, Great Value, Fairway, Hy-Vee, and then a couple minor, maybe potentially more regional brands. But then there's also regular. There's low sodium, low sugar. For a little while, there was green and purple.
I saw sriracha ketchup.
Sriracha ketchup.
Yeah.
There's non-GMO. There's organic. There's cage-free. Right? There's all these different kinds of ketchup. And are we going to try and make a model to say, well, if there's a shortage of tomatoes, it affects this kind of ketchup more, but not this kind, or so on? For the most part, no. Right? We want to simplify that model to say, all right, if there's a shortage of tomatoes, what happens to the price of ketchup? And then analyze from there. So when you think about what makes a theory good, is we're able to understand it, so I don't have to spend 5 hours just giving a breakdown of how the theory works. But it captures like what's going on. So if we're looking at the market for ketchup, and something happens where like 80% of the world's tomato crop dies out, if we don't see a change in the price of ketchup, our model is probably not very good. So we want it to be simple, where I can come in, explain it, and call it good, but complex, where it actually tells a story. right? So that's the idea of a theory. Then we use models to test theories. For the most part, we are going to use them interchangeably. At least for this class, they'll be used interchangeably. If you get more complex, potentially they could be different, specifically if you think about like a physics class. So if you go to physics, the theory might be that the rate of gravity is 9.81 meters per second squared. Trust me on that. That is what it is. So your theory would be that. So then the model that we might generate is, well, if we think this is the case, we want to make a model to figure out how quick will an object fall if they drop it from 100 feet or 150 feet and so on. And you can generate a formula to test that. In physics, in an entry-level physics, it makes a little more sense to have a distinction. For us, we can kind of use them interchangeably. So with our models, what we get into, and I'm going to make my own graph rather than theirs because I like my own better. We get into what's called the circular flow diagram. And this is going to fairly well demonstrate a general picture of the entire economy. So it's going to show us how firms and households interact in different markets. So the two markets we have are goods and service and factors. So the goods and service market is what we think it is. It's the market for goods. So if you go to Walmart, you go buy a product. If you go get a haircut, that might be a service. Whatever the case is. The factors market, the main thing we're going to focus on for now is labor, right? It's something that a household gives to a firm. It's something that either a household puts out, or a factor is something that a firm uses to turn in. A firm will use factors to produce goods. Throughout the course, we'll talk about labor, which is our labor capital, which will be like the machines and stuff that makes everything work. So in my case, I use the surface to, I and the surface work together to make a class workout. There's land. So if we're running a class, we have to have land to run it. Even if we're in an online class, we still have to have land where the servers would be and all that fun stuff. So we have labor, land, capital. And the last one I can think of or two more that we may run into, resources. So if you're producing a good, so if I'm making bread, I have to have flour and water and all that stuff to put into the bread, and time. If I don't have time, I can't really do anything because everything takes time and so on. So what this model is going to look like is we're going to have two sides to it, or I guess four sides, but whatever. So we have our firms, then we have our households, right? And these are going to be your two players. And we said they're going to participate in two different markets, the goods and service market and the factors market. And for the most part, again, we're going to kind of think of it as a goods market and a labor market, just because I think we're all familiar with labor and how that works. And we're going to have is two kind of circles going around. One going, I guess that's clockwise. And the other going counterclockwise. And what we're going to look at is what flows between different players in their respective markets. So if I go to Walmart right now, or I go to Taco John's, or I go anywhere, I'm a household, I'm going to this goods market. In going there, what do I give up? Anybody?
Could you repeat it one more time?
What do you give up when you go to a store, when you go to a restaurant, or so on? Good. So as a household, you give up money, but then what do you receive? The goods. So you receive a good. So if I go to Walmart, I'm going to give up some money, but in exchange, I'm going to receive some goods. Now, if I go to Walmart and all their shelves are empty, I'm not going to give them any money. So if the goods don't deliver, the money doesn't go. Similarly, if I go to Walmart without money or without a means to pay, assuming I can't steal, which you might be able to shoplift. I haven't tried shoplifting from the Boone Walmart, but you may or may not be able to. But if I go in without money, they're not going to provide me the good, right? If I go to Taco John's, I say, hey, I want food. They're gonna say, all right, here, you got to pay for it. I say no. They're gonna say, well, you don't get any food then, right? So no money, no goods, no goods, no money. But on the other side, so I have to have this money to buy goods, but somehow, some way, I need to make money. Like I have to get money from somewhere. So what I say I do is, well, right, I don't sit at home all day. I can't, obviously, I'm here right now. So I have to find some way to make money. So when you go to work, you give up your time, you give up your labor, your skills and efforts. So down here, we're going to say, I go to work every day, give up my labor. Then in exchange for my labor, my employee provides me with a wage, which a wage again is money. That's why I have it in green. And similarly down here, just like in the goods market, if, and as I say this, it's nothing against any of y'all. I just need to make a living, right? So if DMAT called and said, hey, we're not paying you anymore. We still want you to teach, but we're not paying you anymore, right? And again, when I say this, nothing against you all. I absolutely love what I do, but
You gotta afford to live.
right, doing what you love doesn't always make money, right? I would love to spend like the rest of my life on a cruise ship, right? Being on a cruise ship doesn't make money though. So
Right.
yeah, you have not seen me dance.
That's
I-
what I would do on a cruise ship.
Yeah, I barely even danced at my own wedding,
I
so
thought about working on
It'd be fun for like 2 or 3 years just to
Yeah.
try it.
yeah, it'd be fun for a little bit, but
I think you'd get boring or get old after a while.
yeah,
For sure.
well, especially the
Unless you work on Disney's cruise.
yeah.
That would be
I think the
fun.
worst part of it would
Right?
I think the worst part of it would be the passengers.
You would just
Because
yeah,
people
like,
on vacation, because we lived in Myrtle Beach for a while, and when people get on, so 300, say you take a week vacation, or say you take a 14-day vacation to make the math work nice. 350 days out of the year, your mind is in the right place, you're normal, you act like a person, and you can get from point A to point B, you can think, and all that stuff, right? And you know how to be courteous, and so on. So many times when people go on vacation, everything they know in any instance of like common sense or intelligence is just like out the window. They go to
They're on
restaurants, they're like,
vacation.
I have to pay? Yeah. Or the best part is, and if you ever get the chance to live in a tourist town, have fun. But they'll get on the road, and so if I'm going down to Des Moines, right, if I miss my exit, I just go down, come back around, and so on. Not a big deal. If I were on vacation, though, if I see my exit right here, stop in the middle of the road, go whoops, and do stupid stuff. Oh well, whatever.
Or go like 3 lanes over and get to the exit.
Yeah,
I had someone do that to me one time. They were in a camper.
yeah,
I had to slam on my brakes, else I would have been taken off the road.
yeah. It's fun. People on vacation, they just lose their sense of everything. But oh well. But kind of getting back on track. I go out and work. I have to get paid. If DMAX said, "Hey, we're not paying you anymore," as much as I love what I do, and I mean that. I'm not just saying that to make the college sound good. If they didn't pay, I wouldn't show up. But similarly, if I said, and it might work for our small class, it just might because we don't have that many people to tell on me. But if I said, "Hey, I'm not showing up to work anymore," if I said, "Hey, everyone, just be quiet, don't tell anybody, we're not going to show up, and you're all going to get A's," right? If I said that, and in the class of 6, it might work because there's not enough people you don't have the large numbers. But in a class of 20, you're more likely to have someone that's going to tell on us.
I wouldn't tell on you.
Yeah.
I'd be okay with that. Alright.
Well, nobody's going to say that they would be the one that tells, right? I mean, you're not going to say, "Oh, I'd tell on you."
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
No, that's a free break right there.
Yeah.
Why give it up?
So, right, but if I don't show up, Eventually, at some point, I don't know how long it would take for the whole payroll system to work, but at some point, I would stop receiving checks, right? I would stop waking up on the 31st and 15th with a nice extra little chunk of money in my bank account, right? It would just, at some point, it would stop. So if I don't work, I don't get paid. If I don't get paid, I'm not going to go to work. Now, you may volunteer somewhere, but that's kind of different in a way.
There's a little X in there.
So we have that. So on the other side, we have our firms. Right? So we need to make our money from somewhere, and somebody needs to make goods for us. So when you think about a firm, if you're going to start a business, if you have a little snow shoveling business, whatever the case may be, firms need factors. So in order to make a good, they need labor. They need people to come in, make the products. They need resources. They need all that good stuff. But firms need labor to make their products. But if firms don't pay, they have to pay out a wage or rent, or they have to pay for their products. If I rent out space in say in Boone or Ames, if I'm a restaurant owner and rent out space, if I don't pay my rent, I get evicted, and so on. So you have wages, rents for labor, space, and all that good stuff. But then on the other side, firms need to find some way to generate income so that they can pay for these resources to make goods. So firms are going to receive revenue. In exchange for that revenue, they are going to produce goods and services. So if you think about like a barbershop or a hairstylist, and I say them because they're someone they get paid at the time of service, right? When they cut your hair, they get paid, and if they don't cut your hair, they don't get paid. If I'm a barber or a hairstylist, and I decide I'm going to close today, I'm not going to generate any revenue. All right, so today that revenue would be zero, but those goods don't come. Similarly, if I'm open but nobody comes in, I don't produce anything, and I also don't generate that revenue. So what this is, it's a very basic picture of the economy. Just kind of shows that relationship between everybody and how it all works. At this point, we don't have the government in yet. It's just saying, hey, we're all just doing this trade, and so on. As we go through, we'll see maybe some instances where we like government, maybe some instances where we don't like government. We can kind of go through that as we go. So the next little bit, and I think this is a fun part of this chapter, it's our different economic systems. And in some of these, how do we put it? With some of the systems, there are going to be some things that we say is a part of the system. Doesn't necessarily mean we're for it or against it. It just means it's a part of the system. It's something that could come up. Even if by today's standards, it would be very taboo or very not acceptable. So there are going to be three main types of economies we have: traditional, command, and market. We'll kind of walk through them, look at some traits of each one, see what happens, and so on. So the first one is a traditional. And this is going to be one where, so the key part of this one is, if you think about tradition, if you get the chance, watch Fiddler on the Roof. The big song is tradition. Why do we do things the way we do? We don't know, but it's tradition, right? So a traditional economy, the key thing is we do things the way they have always been done. Things are done the same way they've always been done. That's how I meant to underline it. And the traditional is probably one of the original economic systems we've ever had in terms of like human civilization. Today, the main parts of the world where they are widely used, and when I say widely, I'm going to backtrack on that a little bit in a second, but it says used in parts of Asia, Africa, and South America. But when I say that, you say, well, I don't know about that, because China and Japan are certainly not a traditional economy. Countries in Africa, say Liberia, South Africa, Kenya, they're regular economies. They have businesses and all that stuff. In South America, Brazil, Argentina, aren't necessarily. So you're saying, well, why do you say it's used in parts of these continents? And to that, I'm going to focus on Brazil. So in the Amazon rainforest, and I'm going to say that we have what are called uncontacted tribes. So when I say uncontacted, largely what I'm referring to. So if I go to, so I think about in terms of like the global society, whatever you want to call that, I can go, so as an American, so suppose we're starting in America, have a little America-centric view for now. I start in America, I can go to Canada, right? I can call people in Canada. I know, right? I guess I know some people in Canada, but I can fly to Canada. I can go talk to people, and right, it wouldn't be like a huge shock, right? People talk between us and Canada every day, so Canadians would be considered contacted by us. Similarly, I can go to London. I can go to Kenya. I can go to Japan. Right? I go to all these countries. I can even go to Brazil. However, in Brazil specifically, because I know this because I've seen a little documentary on it. I think from today I found out on YouTube. But there are actually people who are kind of, so we have like our global society, right, where we all kind of have this big marketplace of trade and communication. There are people who aren't in that network, like who are completely isolated from the rest of the world and so on. And one of these tribes is actually still in Brazil in the Amazon rainforest. So in Brazil actually protects them. They say, all right, they have laws. They say, hey, you're not going to make communication with them. We're not going to go to war against them. We're going to let them live their lives. We're going to live our lives. I think there are three main reasons of explanation why. The first, we don't know what they're going to do if you came into contact. So if I went into kind of their territory, they might kill me, right? Just because they're very they're not really open to outsiders. So oh, that's on me. Okay. So when we think about them in the traditional economy, one, we don't know what would happen, and if I just walked into their territory, and interacted, they may be friendly, they may not be friendly. We don't necessarily know. The second bit has to do with a little bit of protection. So one, if they do attack me, I would have to attack back in order to keep myself safe, because right, if you have the means, you're gonna defend yourself. So which that would ultimately result in like a war. The second thing is, since they are not in our global society, there might be illnesses that I have, or there might be germs that I have, or illnesses that can come through me and not be a big deal, but to them could potentially like wipe out their entire population. And the third little bit has to do with a heritage, or maybe even, and this sounds kind of darker, but oh well, maybe even some sort of a research perspective, where I believe every now and then they fly planes over, say, hey, what's going on? And the Brazilian government will actually research what they have going on. So a couple reasons why we might leave certain people uncontacted, whether we like it or not. I guess we don't really have a say, because that's the Brazilian government. In that case, it's Brazilian government. So just a part of the reason why they may still be there, and why they may be separated from the rest of the world. But in our traditional economies, we're going to tend to see, is this first one is occupations are going to tend to stay in the family. So we think about this, in my family line, meaning my direct family line, my dad works at Ford Motor Company in Chicago at the assembly plant. My grandpa worked at Chicago assembly plant. My great grandpa worked there. So if we were a traditional economy, logic would follow that I should be working at Chicago assembly plant for Ford Motor Company, right? That's kind of the next logical step in the traditional economy. The other thing we'll see potentially is that we'll have some observable characteristic, and we will tell people what to do based off of what they are. So we think about guys and girls, right? You came into college and you said, hey, you talked to some academic advisor and you said you wanted to do something. I said, what do you want to do with your life? You said, I want to do something. So if you're a guy, if you came in, suppose you're interested in nursing, right? So you came in, you said you wanted to be a nurse. One of the things that I would imagine you were not told, and I'd be shocked if you were, you probably were not told by the academic advisor that you cannot do that because that's a girl's job, right? You probably, I would bet $1 million you were not told that by an academic advisor here, right? Right. So they say, hey, no, if that's what you want to do, go for it. There's actually a fairly high demand for male nurses right now. So you were told that. Similarly, if you're a woman and you went in and you said, oh, I want to be an engineer or something like that, they probably did not tell you, no, you can't do that because that's a man's job, right? You probably were not told that by an academic advisor. And if you were, I would be shocked, right? Just because we kind of say, hey, people can do what they want to do and so on. In a traditional economy, we might tend to see more of and even though nursing tends to be more female dominated, something like engineering tends to be more male dominated, you have that choice to switch between the two if you wanted to. In a traditional economy, we would say, no, you can't do that because you're this, you're that. You can probably stick anything in, and we can maybe have some way to say a traditional economy would support that. But again, it's just, we say, well, last generation did it, so we're going to do it. And last generation say, well, they did it before us, so that's the way we're going to do it, so on and so on. So these last little bits, what we produce, what we consume. Largely, you don't have a lot of room for too much growth because these are mainly agricultural and so on. And with these economies, we see little economic progress and development. And if you think about if I use tradition for the sake of tradition, right? So sometimes the traditional way is actually the best way to do something. But if I have tradition for the sake of tradition, it just doesn't leave room for improvement. It doesn't leave room for me to say, how can I improve my job? How can I make my class better? And so on. So this semester, I got rid of all my face-to-face exams. As I was going through, I just didn't personally, and if other people do it, I'm not knocking a face-to-face exam, but for my class, I just didn't see the benefit of it. And one of the things when I would talk to people, they're like, well, why do you, I was talking to someone else about them, and I'm like, well, I do it because, and this is me being 100% true, I said there were certain things I was doing because I didn't want to seem, and even though I know the class is plenty rigorous, there are certain things I do because I don't want to seem easy, right? I don't want it to seem like, oh, it's just a pushover or anything like that. So you say, oh yeah, we have these face-to-face exams because if someone says, hey, what's going on in your class? If I say I don't have any face-to-face exams, it's going to seem like a unnecessarily easy class, right? And in that case, you're kind of doing stuff for the sake of tradition because that's the way I grew up, or that's the way, I shouldn't say grow up, I wasn't in college that long ago, but that's the way that they did it when I was in school. That's the way we've always done it, so it must be the best way. Whereas kind of as, hey, I can make it rigorous and change some things up, not do it the way that necessarily has been in the past. So when you think about the progress, if we're just doing tradition for the sake of tradition, we don't have room to grow. But also if we think about our separation between, so we're talking about male, female, nurse, and engineering. If I say, all right, if you're a guy, you cannot be a nurse, right? I put a nurse ban on any males, right? Forever. There may be potentially somebody who is a male who is going to be who would have been like a revolutionary in that field. Same thing with engineering. If I say, hey, women can't be engineers, right? If I said that, don't take me out of context, go to news and say, oh, yeah, professor says men shouldn't be nurses and women should be engineers, right? But if we said women cannot be engineers, there could potentially be the person who would have come up with an idea would never do it because we closed that door right off the bat. Right. So that's another thing that hinders that development and economic progress. So the second one we have is command economy. Boy, this one's class fast again. So our command economy. What this is going to be an economy is going to be where economic decisions are made by a government authority, or I'm going to throw in some central power. And the government or that central power owns the resources. So the economic decisions that we have are what goods to produce, how to produce those goods, and what price to charge for the goods. So when I throw in government, right, and that's what this is saying, government decides what's produced, what prices we charge, they decide the methods of production and the wages. So these two are kind of our potential negatives in that we give up our freedom. Right. So if you really like accounting and that's what you want to go into, even if today you're not that good at it or you're not that naturally inclined to it, you're free to pursue it and try and get good at it. Right. Even if you have to force that skill just because you enjoy it, but you're not good at it, even if you have to force yourself to get good at a certain skill, right, you have the ability, nobody's really going to stop you. Right. Whereas in this type of economy, you might have it where you might come into school, instead of them saying, hey, what do you want to do? They'll give you this test and they'll say, all right, take this test. You take a test and they say, all right, you got a 35 in math and a 20 in English. So you're going to be a accountant, right? If you hate accounting, too bad. You did well in that section. So that's what you get to do. The potential upside, I say potential because it could depend on how you look at it. But when we have this, the potential upside is that this government or this central power provides goods, health, education, maybe other stuff for no charge or for your taxes. I hate this in econ in general, and we'll see this next week. This word is a very bad word because when we get to opportunity costs, we'll kind of see, hey, everything comes at a cost. And even when we say we have, and every year, Republicans, Democrats, they promise something for free. They're like, oh yeah, we're going to provide this, or that. The money for the stuff that they're providing has to come from somewhere. It's going to come from your taxpayer dollars. The question is, right, can the government provide it for a better deal than what we can provide it? And that's,
Would free college really be that bad?
it depends. Depends how you look at it. So on one aspect, we might say, well, right, it's going to make it where you can go and not have to worry about debt. But when you have that free college, you're going to, so there's going to be a couple parties aren't going to be happy about it. One, suppose that I just graduated from college, right, and I have this debt. I worked hard to pay off my debt, and I just paid it off, right? The issue that I'm going to have with it is now so we save free college, right, for everybody. That college bill still has to get paid, right? I still have to get paid. The electric company still has to get paid to run the lights and so on.
Would taxes just go up for
Yes,
that?
taxes would go up to pay for that cost.
And that would screw you over because you had to spend all that time paying back college where these kids go to college for free, come out with no debt, and are already at such an advantage.
Correct. So
you're like still either paying back your loans or like you just got it. So you're 10 years in and you had to spend all that money on your school where they come out of college and don't have to spend that 10 years to pay up for school.
It sounds like it's basically based on like equality about how what he said and just how he made it seem. So
right. So there are advantages and disadvantages to it. So the advantage of it is that across the board, anybody would be able to, and I would assume that if we did free college, there'd be some sort of merit to it, so that you can't just come in and say, oh, I'm sitting in college for no cost and yada yada, right? And you're just taking it, abusing it. So there'd have to be some sort of limits on it.
what about terms and conditions?
Yeah, there would be. There'd have to be terms saying, hey, just like if you think about your financial aid, By the way, I'm opening this quiz up for y'all.
How do we get there again?
Go to app.gosoapbox.com. Type, yeah, your phone's good. Type the code in, and then it'll take you to the quiz, and I'm opening it just so that it's through. We can talk.
And the quiz is due.
You'd think of doing it like right at the end of class, but I probably won't do grades, and I probably won't do the grades until at least tomorrow.
All right.
So if you get the code, it'll be open through tomorrow at least. So when you think about quote unquote free education, right? The advantage of it is that you'd have this generation that can come in and you don't have to worry. It's one less thing you kind of have to worry about because it's taken care of. But the disadvantage of it is that one, we have to find a way to figure out, make sure that nobody's abusing it, make sure terms and conditions are met. The second area where we could run into issues is actually with the colleges themselves. So with the tuition, with it where we pay for tuition, we as the college have to be able to, so DMAC has to be able to compete with Iowa State, right? There has to be a reason to get you to want to come here instead of there. There has to be a reason to get you to want to come here instead of taking classes at University of Phoenix or Capella.
But what is lowering their conditions rate, lowering their tuitions rate, make it more of a competition?
Potentially. And it could, but the advantage of having that lower, so if we think about us versus Iowa State, right? You're deciding, and you say you want to come here for 2 years. And suppose you know you're going to get your bachelor's degree. You decide to come here for 2 years. One of the big reasons you're going to come here is because we offer a much lower tuition. So with the system where you actually pay for schooling, the schools have an incentive to lower their costs because they have to compete with one another. If you had it where it's just you can go wherever because, and I don't know the exact details of what different people have plans for the free system, but if we said, hey, everybody goes to, you're cool, yeah, you're good. You go wherever you want for free. The issue that could come up is, well, one, we don't have to worry about our costs. So we might come in and say, well, we can just run these super high costs because the money's going to come in either way, whether we go low or high cost, and every college will be able to do that. So there's a little bit of an accountability perspective on the colleges of tuition. If you pay tuition, it makes it where I'm accountable to you because you actually have money in this. So I have actually an incentive to provide a good service. Whereas if you don't have any money in it, you may not care. You may not care as much, and I don't have an incentive to. It's like going to the DMV.
It'd be like going to like a high school 2.0.
Pretty much, yeah.
But I feel like they should do it where like college isn't free, but a lot cheaper than what it is.
Oh,
Because
yeah,
then like,
sure.
because if college is free, then how does Iowa State pay for their football facility and?
Oh, they pay
like
they
that?
pay for it through donations. Because
Yeah.
football pays for itself.
Yeah.
Football pays for like the rest of athletics.
Yeah.
But
Or like just like regular maintenance on the school and stuff. Like, wouldn't schools just start deteriorating because like they're not generating nearly as much income?
you'd get tax revenue.
Yeah, like
It would all be from tax revenue, the same way high schools. We're
yeah,
getting
like
new high
it'd be like a
schools.
state
Yeah.
kind of thing. That's why I think they should have like tuition still, so that they can still make some money, but then like still get some tax money. So it's not all just taxes.
Yeah.
That way it's like a little bit of taxes, but like college is a lot cheaper. But
If you get the chance, the key, and I'll leave you with this: look up student loan debt. Student loans and the way they're insured are part of the reason your tuition is so expensive. Look into that and why that happens. But keep an eye on FREDCast. Take care of that. Have a good couple days. Be smart. Be safe. If we get into a conversation like this in a class and you need to go, you're good to go. I'm not going to say, oh, well, we talked later, so stuff like that. But feel free to talk too.
Thank you, Kevin.
Yep. Thank you.